Thanks for staying with me on One Slot. We're still discussing ways to preserve Africa's heritage monuments and sites. And joining me on this second half is John Kofi Annan. He's a Pan-Africanist also, and he joins me from Accra, Ghana. Thank you so much for joining me on One Slot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Greetings from Accra, Ghana, and to everybody in Nigeria.
Thank
my
you.
Second home, of course. My second home, of course.
Thank you.
You know, I have lived in Nigeria for 11 years, so Nigeria is my second home.
Definitely a second home to you. But while we're looking at the history of Africa and celebrating and preserving Africa's heritage and culture, we've looked at the past years from colonization to what we have today. How would you say that Africa has been able to preserve its heritage, its monuments, and its sites today?
Well, now Africa, all right. But at a point in time, we believe that what we had was not good enough. So now everything about Africa is we copying the Westerners. But to tell you the truth,
John, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, go on, please.
Everything that has to do with civilization, industrialization, that is even architectural projections of the world that we have today, where I mean cities. It was Africa that first built cities. We have the stone cities of Zimbabwe. We have the city of the ancient Benin Kingdom. Africa built cities. We have the pyramids when Egypt were. So if you look at it critically, Africa is the first on the global stage to have what is called a good heritage. We gave the world what it is today. Everything the world learned and they are making use of in terms of technology, in terms of agriculture, knowledge.
John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Let's talk about agriculture. The system of agriculture in Africa is what they learned, and then everybody is now making use of the system. Far back, even before Christ was born. This is one thing that we have not taken notice of in this era. And for us to grow beyond
Now, Joel, what you're looking at, I mean, we're still trying to get your connection, and we do hope we can hear you clearly. But from what you're saying, you say so much about the historical sites that Africa has. Now, there are some argument that says that there is geographical imbalance in UNESCO's awarding of heritage site titles. I mean, if you look at 1,154 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, we have them in Europe, while we have about 100 that's been designated to Africa. So would you say that the award for the UNESCO heritage sites in Africa has been too Eurocentric, as some people would opine?
Oh, yes. What I would say is that, you know, everything according to the world stage doesn't want to promote or project Africa as a whole. But it is time we project ourselves. Yes, it is time we project ourselves, because we have what it takes to sell Africa to the world. Like, if you look at the monuments and the sites we have in Africa, I was saying that would destroy the ecosystem of the environment. There should be laws that will protect Lake Victoria and every other place around it, so that there wouldn't be any development, there wouldn't be any industrialization that would destroy what we have. We have water bodies, we have to be preserved. Now, when you come to monuments, I was so glad that we have parks, we have the pyramids in Egypt and all that. I want to say something about this. You see, every day archaeologists are digging facts and figures, facts about the pyramid, coming to Egypt, coming to Morocco, coming here and digging a lot of facts about what we have. But are we preserving these places? Very soon, industrialization will take place, and then at the end of the day, we will destroy whatever we have. The ancient cities we built, the project that has existed on the continent for over 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, need to be preserved. We don't need UNESCO to tell us which one can be a heritage site. We need to promote ourselves. We need to promote ourselves, because if you are waiting for UNESCO to tell you this can be accepted as a World Heritage Site, then we are not going to have the favor that Africa deserves from them. We need to do what we have. And you go to villages in Africa, there are so many things to know about villages in Africa, to know about cities in Africa, and we need to bring all these resources together and begin to promote Africa and tell the world that the world started from here. Okay, just recently, Ghana launched a cave, an ancient cave in the Kowu Mountains that is believed that it has existed for over 2,500 years, right? So such a cave has now become a site that is being cherished. It's a cultural heritage. It tells where the people came from, how the people have settled in these places over the years.
Now, John, you would agree with me that to manage or preserve this cultural heritage that Africa has, it needs funds, it needs money. And while you're saying that Africa should be able to take up its responsibilities, there is an example that the African World Heritage Fund, whose membership consists of African governments who ratified the 1972 UNESCO Convention, assists member states in capacity building and investing in heritage. Now, what do you think should be done to help in the funding for the management and preservation of this heritage sites? Because if you're saying that we should not wait for UNESCO, what about African governments? Do you think that they can take up this responsibility and fully be able to preserve these sites that we have in Africa?
Oh, joining UNESCO is not a bad idea. Being with UNESCO is not a bad idea. But are we contributing much as an African government into preserving our sites and monuments? This is something that we should take critical look at it. That is developing it internally to attract tourists, right? That is going to be a way of generating money for Africa. Depending on the country, we have these sites and monuments. For instance, if you come to Ghana and we say, okay, let's take, for instance, Elmina Castle, for instance. Now, Elmina Castle don't need UNESCO to come and serve it, to help in its maintenance. We have to preserve, we have to have laws to make sure that this site that has existed over the years, that tells a story about Africa and where we're coming from, what we've gone through, and where we are now, need to be preserved for tourism by us, Africans. So
but have African governments been able to do that? I think that is where I'm going to. How have African governments been able to preserve this in terms of funding and management of this sites? Because we see so many sites that are just being poorly managed in Africa.
Yes, so African governments should allocate funds into promotion of our heritage sites, into development of our heritage sites, into maintenance of our heritage sites. And then there should be a law by African Union instructing every African country in making sure that our heritage sites are well developed to attract tourism. You know, there's so much money in tourism that if we can really develop our heritage sites and monuments through tourism, it's going to give Africa a whole lot of money from tourists around the world coming to Africa to learn a lot from us. So now, I believe that African government should allocate in their budget, they should allocate some amount of money for preservation of heritage sites in Africa.
Now, for you, John, what are some of your concerns that you feel may compromise the future preservation of this Africa heritage, or this African monuments and sites that we have? What are some of your concerns you see for the future?
Okay, I see a situation whereby development is destroying, that is real estate development is destroying what we have as heritage sites. When we talk about heritage sites, monuments, preservation of it, it means that there should be something, a law binding the destruction of this or the doing away of this site. For instance, when you go to Benin City today, we have the ancient Benin City, which the ancient Benin walls, which were pulled down, the Benin City, which were pulled down, and then, as I speak to you, development is taking over this area. Once housing and real estate development, industrialization takes over these areas, what happens is that we cannot trace any fact to tell the generations to come that there was something like this here thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. This is what our forefathers built, and this is the remains of it. So, very key challenge is industrialization, real estate development, which is destroying some of these lands. So the government should make sure that there is proper law binding people from going near the lands or the sites of which tell stories about Africa. For instance, if we have we should not destroy the river. Right? That river might be telling a story of our heritage. But
now, this monumental sites that we... Now, John, while you're looking at preserving all of this, now some people have argued that it's not just the African governments that should be involved in preserving all of this. With colonization, modernization, we see that some of these sites, some of these monuments are now government property. Meanwhile, these sites tell a story of a people. So what do you feel about the local community being involved in these sites, these monuments that we have in Africa? Because it seems like the government has taken all control or total control of the sites that we have in Africa.
I believe that every community should be able to tell their story of using their sites, monuments, using their culture, heritage. What is very key is that, for instance, if you get to Egypt, the community that which is hosting the pyramids should be able to say, this is what tells the story of our forefathers. This is what tells the story of where we came from. It need not to be destroyed. It need not to be touched. Okay, so there should be government and community partnership in maintaining and preserving our heritage sites.
All right, now,
this
John,
comes together because...
Yeah, go on, please.
Because
go on.
if communities decide to sell these lands that we have this heritage sites and monuments on, what is going to be done to it? It will be destroyed. And at the end of the day, government will not have control over anything there. What is very key is that with the sense of belonging to the communities, they should partner with the government to making sure that they are developing these sites and monuments for their development, not necessarily for the government. Because, for instance, if there are tourists coming to your village to come and view a particular site or monument, who is being promoted? Is it the government or the community? When there's a development coming to that community, who is going to benefit from it? Is it the government or the community? So these are very key issues that need to be addressed. Communities, villages should also partner with government in making sure that their cultural heritage, monuments, and sites are preserved.
Now, while you look at local community partnership with the government, there's also been an issue of the education of what this monumental sites, the history of all of that. And our previous guest talked about so much of all the cities that have been eroded due to modernization or European teachings, how do we begin to change this perception or this wrong perception that we have in the world today, and bring about the news or proclaim the news, the fact that Africa indeed is the history or the birthmark for all humankind? How to begin to change that narrative that we have in the world? Because if you go to Europe, they don't see it that way about Africa.
Thank you very much. One thing which is very key is that when people do not know their history, they can never tell their story, and they can never know what will be their glory in the future. So, very important is this. We should start education sensitization programs to let people know. We have Ministry of Tourism, or we have maybe Department of Tourism or tourism agencies across the countries. We should be able to bring up programs and projects to educate people, to let them know that these are what will keep the community going, or this monument or this site is what tells the story of where the people are coming from. For instance, let me use example of the Ashanti Kingdom of Ghana. The Ashanti Kingdom of Ghana still believes in the site where Konfanoche commanded the golden stool and where he planted a sword and all that. This is a story telling about what the kingdom stands for, how where it came from, what it has been. So even in millions of years to come, the kingdom will be able to tell a story of how the Ashanti Empire ruled the world, how Okonfanoche. So by evidence, empirical evidence of what is on ground. So it is very, very important to start educating people to understand that whatever we have as a cultural heritage must be preserved for the future generations.
All right, thank you so much, John. That's
Education is key.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. That's a whole lot of things you said about how we can preserve Africa's culture and heritage. Now, on the final word, I mean, you're in Ghana presently. What has been your most preserved site in Ghana that you've seen so far?
I really love what is going on in Ghana here, because irrespective of how development is taking over the city, there are places that you come in Accra. It still tells the story of how the city has existed over the years. And it is so wonderful to know, like when you come to, when you go all through the coastal lines of Ghana, you see the forts, you see the castles built as far back 1482. You can imagine a castle built as far back 1482 is still in existence in Ghana. What it means is that over the years, we have been able to preserve what we have. That tells a story of what has gone through, what the people have gone through over the years, what has happened in the country as a people, what we have experienced, especially even colonization, slave trade, and all that. These sites have never been destroyed. And we keep promoting it more and more to tell the story of what has transpired over the years, 500, 600 years ago, what happened in Ghana. And today you can still have a look at the things that were done, and then you can say, oh, this happened, and this is the evidence of what happened. You cannot tell the story of Ghana, or you cannot.
I must say that that's a good one for Ghana, and we do hope that, sorry to cut you there, but we are far run out of time. But I must say that that's a good one for Ghana, and we do hope that other African countries can also replicate it and preserve this monuments and sites that make us as a people. Thank you so much, John Kofi Annan, for joining us all the way from Accra, Ghana, and sharing so much views on how to preserve Africa's cultural heritage. Thank you so much for joining me on One Slot.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. Now, as former South African president and anti-apartheid hero once said, he said, our rich and varied cultural heritage has a profound power to help build our nation. Now, most African countries have, however, fallen short of this statement, as the continent is plagued with many preservation issues, which include but not limited to lack of proper management, monitoring and evaluation, lack of funds and stakeholder involvement, poor government concern and professional commitment, vandalism and illicit trafficking, low promotions of cultural heritage, and natural catastrophes such as invasive intervention and climate change. But today we know that heritage is our legacy from the past, what we live with today and what we pass on to the future generations. They are both a monument to human handiwork and a remembrance of times past. The message today is bold and clear. Effective heritage conservation is vital for sustainable heritage utilization. And we join our voice with our guests here, and we're saying that it is time for Africa to begin to preserve this heritage monuments and sites that we have in Africa. Thanks so much for joining me on today's edition of Onslaught. I am Rita Omodia. Till next time, bye-bye.